everybody. Welcome back to Odd and Untold. This is episode 15, and a little monkey wrench got thrown in the works this week. Was supposed to be interviewing Heather from Culture of Conspiracy, a really cool podcast, and we were set to record yesterday. I posted on Instagram about it, and I have not heard from Heather. So I'm a little concerned. She hasn't been on social media since yesterday afternoon. She posted a new podcast about Big Pharma and have not heard from her since. So not really like her. We had a really nice conversation on Thursday. We had set up a time to talk yesterday, and I've not seen her online or have seen her post. She hasn't responded to any of my messages, so I'm hoping that everything is good with Heather and her family and her loved ones. And Heather, thinking about you. I hope everything's okay, and hope we still get a chance to do our chat and our podcast together, and praying for you. So I hope everything's okay. But still had to do a podcast this week, so I'm flying solo today. Had kind of a rough week. That's just been kind of my idiom lately, is having a rough time. So I just wanted to do a little bit of stuff on my own tonight. So again, wanted to say that I hope Heather's okay from Culture of Conspiracy. And so we'll move on. I'm going to talk about a few little personal stories tonight. First, I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Ethan. I said I posted this photo on Instagram yesterday, and he saw something in the background on my desk. He thought it was a Jawa from Star Wars. I'm wearing my Boba Fett shirt tonight. So I'm just going to show you guys what this is. This is just a little, let's see if the camera will pick this up. Just a little knockoff Lego Bigfoot, and he's got a camera in his hand because Bigfoot would take pictures of you. Like, we're always trying to take pictures of Bigfoot. So not a Jawa, sadly. I wish I had some Jawas. I don't have any. And next to him, from the same line, this is a little Lego, knockoff Lego Yeti, Abominable Snowman, and he's got a little popsicle there. So these are always on my desk. So I thought just show that for Ethan. And I also have, for my Misty friends, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Tom Servo. He's here, so if there's a way I can keep him down here, he can make funny commentary about my terrible podcast. All right, everybody. So yeah, just a few things I keep on my desk. And like I said, I was having a rough time of things lately. So today, I pulled out an old favorite, Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Started reading that again. I read it every couple of years. It's one of my favorite books. I just think it's like one of those perfect horror novels. And it got me thinking. So I was thinking about personal stories to tell tonight. And it got me thinking about animal ghosts and pet ghosts, and something that gets talked about, but not a lot. Usually people see spirits of other people. You're not really seeing animals. And I've had discussions with people about this before, because it is an interesting topic of why we see the ghosts of certain things and not others. But I wanted just to talk a little bit about animals, because in the book, the family cat dies. And of course, the protagonist tries to bring the cat back to life, and then things go downhill from there. So I wanted to talk about pets who have passed on, animals, people who see animals that aren't there, spectral animals. I'm not talking about phantom animals. That would be like phantom cats or phantom dogs, Hounds of the Baskervilles, and out of place animals. People see kangaroos and elephants in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and things like that. Fascinating stuff, but I'm talking more about ghost animals. And I had a couple of personal stories about that. Not many. I've had two dogs in my life. One was a black lab mix with like a German Shepherd. So she was like a black lab, but just a little smaller, pointier nose. Very good dog. My second dog was a Shih Tzu, little white Shih Tzu named Belle. And she passed 6 years ago now, I believe. No ghosts from either one of them, though I do have a story about the first one, Shadow, and I'll get to that in a minute. But my wife and I had 3 cats, and A few years back, the oldest one, Phineas, the only male, he died. And I was very sad. He was my buddy. He would come down to the basement with me and play video games. Anytime I was playing Skyrim, he'd come down. He'd come down for Fallout 4. He'd come down for Red Dead Redemption. Anytime I was playing video games, he'd come down to the basement after work at night and just kind of, my back is itchy, maybe just I'm talking about him, but he would kind of sit on the couch behind me and drape himself around my neck, and his head would be here and his claws would just be like digging into my neck. And we became buddies, even though I'm really not a cat person. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not a cat person. But Finn and I became really close, and it was really sad when he died. I was very sad. I was really upset. I was upset when my dogs died too, obviously, but for me to be this upset about a cat was shocking for me, because again, I'm not a cat person. So he died. We put him down. We actually did it peacefully in his little favorite spot in the backyard. My wife, Laura, she would go out and walk him. She put him on a leash, and he loved being back there and just sniffing all the plants and trying to get into neighbors' yards and just being outdoors. He was that type of cat. He was very big when she got him fixed. So he had grown, and he was just a very large cat. Not really fat, but just like a small mountain lion. Very cool cat. And when he passed, it was very sad. We still had two other cats though, so that was good. But weird things did start to happen after he passed, and some of this could be chalked up to just psychological training, expectations. But there were a few instances where it really made me scratch my head and think, because it wasn't in my mind. And there were a few instances where Laura experienced it with me. So basically what would happen is I'd go down the basement. That's where my video games were. It was kind of like my man cave. And coming down the stairs, there were a couple of stairs and then a landing where the side door was. So you had to come in on a flat landing. So it was a, normal size landing, and then a few more stairs down to the basement proper. And after he passed, I would be down in the basement playing video games, and out of the corner of my eye, I'd see a dark shape come down. Finn was like a dark gray in color, and I just see it out of the corner of my eye coming down. And for that split second, you're just like, oh, Finn's coming down to kind of hang out with me. And, it would take me that, half a second to realize, no, he's passed, he's gone. And it wasn't one of the other cats. It's just, I saw what I thought was him. Sometimes it would happen when the other two cats were down with me already. I'd be downstairs. Sometimes my wife would be out late working or out with friends or whatever, and I was the second choice. So they'd come down and hang out with me, because I was never the first choice with them. Finn, I was usually the first choice, usually. But the other two, they never chose me if Laura was home. So sometimes they'd be with me and I'd still see this shape, cat-sized thing come out of the corner of my eye down to the landing, because he would do that a lot. He'd come down to the landing and kind of look at me. He wouldn't run all the way down to join me right away. He'd kind of come halfway down, stand on the landing, look at me, then come down and join me. So I would see that a lot. And again, the skeptic in me says it's my brain being trained to just expect him. I go down to play video games, I go down to watch TV, he's going to come join me. I'm just trained. My brain is expecting it, so it's seeing something. And that's fine. I can accept that. I'm not saying what I saw was a ghost, just that it was weird that I would see him come down. And that was just always weird to me, to see a dark shape always come down. It was never one of the other cats. Anyway, there was one other time, and Laura would see him sometimes too. She would see something out of the corner of her eye. And again, we kind of chalked it up to just our brains expecting to see him. But there was one time we were sitting down in the basement and just watching TV, and she was down there, so the cats were with us because they loved her over me. But wherever she went, they went. So we were all down in the basement, and from upstairs in the kitchen, right that's where the entrance to the basement was, we kind of heard Phineas's purr, like his call for us. Like he would get this little purr of excitement right before he ran down to the basement or ran to greet us, just a, and we both kind of heard it. And stuff like that makes you wonder, because that's not something that, my brain is just expecting to see him come down, or she's expecting to see him come into the bedroom or the kitchen. It was a shared experience, and to me, that's always a little bit more interesting and legitimate to say, okay, something weird happened, because we're all in the basement, all the cats are with us, and we heard him. It was like just clear as day, and we both kind of looked at each other and was like, Finn, like, is he up there? And at this point, he had been dead for a while. So it wasn't even like that new phase of like, oh, he could still bumble down because it just happened last week or whatever. It was pretty established in our minds at this point that he was gone. And just to hear him purr from upstairs, to hear that purr. And of course, it could have been something from outside that sounded like him, blah, blah, blah. We always try to think about those things. But it was interesting that it sounded just like him, and my wife heard it the same way I heard it. We both were just like, Finn, that sounds just like him. So very weird, very strange. And 2 years ago on Thanksgiving, our second oldest cat died, Macarena, or we called her Duties. She passed away. She had just started acting very strange one night, and we put her to bed. We used to keep the cats locked away at night. Otherwise, they would be all over our faces at night. So we had a little area in the house, a big area actually in the house, with their litter box and their water and their food and the big couch. And they would just sleep on the couch, on the heating pad and stuff at night. And they loved it. So we put her away because she was acting a little funny that night. We said, she's still weird in the morning. We'll take her to the vet. And when we woke up, she was dead. And it turned out that there was something in her heart. One of the valves, I think, burst, and the doctors had, after they did the autopsy, the necropsy, I think they call it on animals, they had said there would have been no way to know this beforehand, and there would have been no way to prevent it. It just was like a very sudden thing that we never would have seen coming, and we didn't. She was just acting a little strange that night, and the next morning, which was Thanksgiving Day, she was dead. We found her dead. So very sad. And the funny thing is with her, we never really heard anything. We never saw, there was never, we didn't have that same experience of seeing things out of the corner of our eye, because by this point we had stopped seeing or hearing Finn. But at this point, Duties, we just, once she passed, there was really we didn't really feel her or see her. So who knows? Did Finn come back? Did he have unfinished business? And Duties was just happy to be gone. I don't know, but never saw or heard anything from her. There's one cat left, the fat one, Sweeties. She's very chunky and portly, very sweet. The name is suitable for her. She's very sweet, but she's still with us. So it'll be interesting to see what's experienced once she passes, which will be probably 30 years from now, knowing her. But yeah, just reading Pet Sematary today made me think about those experiences, and they're quote unquote paranormal experiences that I've had that I don't really think about too much, because again, I tend to dismiss them as just my brain playing tricks on me. But the meow that time, that purr, that he, that little call, it's not a meow, maybe like a chirp, but it was just like a, sort of thing that he would do to let us know that he was coming to come get us. For both of us to hear that was really interesting for us. And again, I'm not saying it's paranormal, but sometimes you like to believe that, and it could be comforting to just think that your pet is still there. So I wanted to backtrack to my dog, my first dog, Shadow, the black lab, because I have an interesting story about this, and it's not a ghost story. It's more of like a ripple in time sort of thing, if you will. So we're going back a few years now. I was probably in high school, 16, 17, and I had a girlfriend. I know that's hard to believe, but I did. Somehow I managed. And it was her first time at my house. we had just started dating, and she came up into my room, and my room was in the front of the house. It was a very small room, door, little nightstand, my bed. I mean, it was very, very small room. But we were just sitting on the edge of my bed. We had to keep the door open, high school kids, and kept the door open. And we were just talking. We're sitting on the bed talking, and suddenly she just kind of reaches down to like grab something. She just reaches her hand out. She just reaches down, and I'm kind of looking at her like, "What are you doing?" And she sits back up, and she's like, "I that was weird." And I'm like, "What happened?" And she's like, "I could have sworn a black dog just came in here, and I went down to pet her, and then there was no dog." And at the time, like I thought it was weird, and we kind of laughed about it. And I kind of joke because that apartment, I've mentioned that apartment on the podcast before, the Brooklyn apartment in Bay Ridge. There was always like weird stuff happening there. But we hadn't gotten the dog yet. We didn't get Shadow till I was about 19. So it was about 2 years later, 2.5 years later, maybe even, before we even got Shadow. So we had never had a dog. The only dog I know that had ever been in the house was my grandparents' dog, and she was a big Dalmatian. So big white dog with black spots. And what my girlfriend had seen was a black dog. She said it wasn't small. She said it was about a mid-sized dog, which Shadow was. She wasn't a full lab. She wasn't small, but she wasn't like a full-size, big lab. So it was one of those things, kind of like when I talked a few weeks ago about the staircase story, the ghost on the staircase, where it didn't really strike me as something paranormal until later. Like once we got the dog, and then I was like, wait a second, now we have a black dog. It's almost like she was seeing something from the future. Who knows? Again, there could have been somebody in my home who had a black dog before my family bought the house, and it's the ghost of that dog, or she could have just been seeing things. But I thought that was an interesting little bit of coincidence, if you will, that she had seen this dog. And I'm going to get into one more story that involves Shadow. It's a human ghost story, but Shadow was with me, so I'm going to talk about that. So Shadow was very precocious and just loved going out for walks at night and loved greeting people. She was very friendly. She was always finding garbage in the street and putting it in her mouth, and just being a general pain in the ass. But we loved her. And there was one night where, and again, this is in Brooklyn, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I was out with my girlfriend at the time, a different girlfriend. This is a couple of years later. And I was probably in my 20s at this point. I was in college. So I come home very late one night. It was probably about 1:30 in the morning, Friday night, and I was beat. But dog had to go out. I came home. She got all excited. She's, her gets her second win, even though she had been out for the last time that night. And my dad was like, all right, she's got to go out. So I put her harness on, put her leash on, and I took her out. And as I said, she used to like to sniff the curb for garbage. So she was always getting like discarded chicken bones or dead mice, or, like really gross stuff. She would just find like anything that had fallen out of a garbage pail or a garbage bag. She would find, put it in her mouth, and refuse to drop it. And I would always have to like try to pull it out. So while walking her, I learned to kind of just stare down at her, not really looking ahead, to make sure if I had seen something, a chicken bone, I could kind of pull her away from it before it got in her mouth and she choked on it or whatever. Luckily, she never did. She was kind of keeping it in her teeth, and I'd have to yank it out, but not really a fun thing to do at 1:30 in the morning on a Friday when you're dead tired. So anyway, I'm walking her down the block, and I lived between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue. So I'm walking down towards 6th Avenue, and I'm watching her, and it's, again, probably 1:30 in the morning. And I'm not looking ahead, I'm looking at her. But out of my periphery, I see a woman walk out. I just really see the legs and the bottom of her dress. And it was a floral dress and went all the way down to her feet. And she was wearing boots. And it startled me because I didn't want Shadow to jump on her. So I kind of, and Shadow lunged and I pulled back. And again, this all happened within seconds. But as I look up, I'm looking at this dress, and it's a floral dress. And it kind of reminded me of something out of like Little House on the Prairie, just that kind of drab earth tone browns and tans and beige. You know, and as I'm looking up and trying to pull shadow back and apologize to this woman, she disappears. Like I didn't even see her torso really. It was a dress, a little bit of a white blouse, and then she wasn't there, and there was nobody there. And again, the dress for the time was just weird. I mean, this is the 90s. No one on the block was going to wear. I thought maybe it was a house coat or something, and maybe an elderly neighbor had come out, but it was just weird that I'm looking at her, and as I'm pulling shadow back, the person disappeared, and that always stuck with me. That was one of the few paranormal experiences in my life that scared me, because it just maybe it was more startled me or shook me, because just something, I'm thinking there's a person there, and then it's just like there's nobody. So it was very strange. One of my favorite stories, because she was with me, the dog was with me, and she lunged at this person. She was kind of sniffing the curb, and then kind of went to this person. As I saw this person on my periphery, and you're a dog owner, you get used to keeping them from jumping on people, and that's what I was trying to do. And then as I'm looking up to look this woman in the eye and apologize to her, she just disappeared, and there was nobody there, and it was just dead quiet. And I'm looking around, and there was nobody there. So weird story. Again, it was late. I was tired. Maybe I was just seeing things, but every paranormal story can be chalked up to just, you were just seeing things. And I don't like to believe that every paranormal story is that. It's a possibility. You got to consider it. But at the same time, I don't think I was seeing things. I've never seen that before, never seen it since. It was weird. So, but that's probably the extent of my stories about pets. Don't really have any more. Have not seen the cat since. Duties we have not seen since. So hopefully they're resting in peace somewhere. But if you guys have any paranormal stories about your pets, I'd love to hear about it. If you have any other paranormal stories about anything you want to talk about, feel free to email me, jason@oddanduntold.com. So oddanduntold.com. It's odd and A-N-D, untold.com. I'll put that up I'll put a link in the video and the podcast here. And hopefully next week we have a guest. We'll see how the week goes. I have a few things lined up, but schedules keep getting moved around, and hopefully Heather will be on and can finally talk to her. But until then, everybody, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.